Loibner-Waitkus.
All right, let's do this thing. And you probably noticed some changes. I'm learning how to use video. I don't work in video, so I'm learning to use iMovie or whatever for the first time. So I probably will give you a headache with graphics and things like that now that I'm starting to figure it out. But I realized I was so caught up in trying to just get the videos recorded that I didn't realize how ugly everything I did was. So I've tried to make it a little better because I also teach graphic design. So uh, I've improved that, even though you're going to get a migraine with all the graphics I add to things. Let's start with a class update. And by the way, my shirt is not this big of a V-neck. I have uh, what's it called? A lapel mic, and it's pulling my shirt down. But anyway, the class update, assignment number 1, and a lot of people have been asking about this. This is the object. First thing, it's due October 1st. Now the big question is, why so far away? Why do we wait so long before your first assignment's due? And the answer to that is pretty simple. You really haven't read that much. We really have to kind of get halfway through the book before you know composition and lighting and enough stuff to shoot decent photos. So I could, make you start shooting earlier, but you're not really going to have the quality of images and the knowledge that you need. So I sort of decided to kind of push things a little further back rather in the semester, and then so you have more knowledge and can shoot more images. So toward the end of the semester, there's a lot more shooting than there is early on. So that's important. Another thing too, you're shooting an object, what to pick. Pick something that is, we talked about size a little bit. The bigger thing is that you be able to move it inside, outside, move it around, be able to play with it, that it's big enough that you can shoot different angles and interesting enough. You don't want to pick something highly reflective so that you're going to be reflected in everything. You don't want to pick something tiny that uh, you can't get close enough to with your focal length. You don't want to pick something so big you can't move it. So keep that in mind. Also, don't pick anything that's a lot of people pick things that are too dark and suck light away. Uh, and we'll talk about that a little more later. With the reading responses, one of the things every semester students get confused with this, the textbook is not bad. I like it. It's pretty concise and gets to the point. It's still technical enough. But why do we jump around so much? We go from chapter 3 this week to 8, and then we kind of go back. So don't think we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and get confused and start doing reading responses out of order and that kind of thing. Specifically, we're jumping around this week because of chapter 3 is on lighting and chapter 8 is on light. So we'll talk about that a little more in a second. The one thing that you need to understand, and that's really the point in this video, and this video is going to be short, and I'll talk about that in a second, but the two things that it takes, whether you're going to be, photograph your grandkids, to taking good phones with cell phone photos, to using $20,000 worth of camera equipment, the two things that you absolutely have to understand: composition and lighting. You've got to understand those two things, and that's why I'm going to transition into lighting now and discuss that, why this video is not going to be that long or that in depth, because I want you to get through chapter 3, which you read last week, which I would discuss today, which is on light and exposure, and then chapter 8, which is next week, which is using light. And so we're going to sort of combine those into one thing. And so next week's lecture will be much, much longer. In fact, I'm going to scroll on your screen how much of the sections within those two chapters on lighting and how much information you've got to take in between now and the next lighting video. So I'll give you a second to do that. Okay, so why is light so important? That you understand that is the basis of everything to do with photography. In fact, I in high school was a high school photographer and got a not a job, got an internship or something. A local photographer who was, well, Central Arkansas photographer who was really a big name in wedding photography and really expensive and all of that, had seen some of my work and offered to let me work with him and learn the ins and outs. And after about it was fewer than 5 times I worked with him, I just stopped going because he would not shut up about lighting. That's all he wanted to talk about. He was obsessed with it. And not until college did I really realize how important that was. Luckily, I had the eye to kind of see it anyway, and so some people do, some people kind of have to be trained, but it's the most important aspect really of photography. You are capturing lighting. And so what I want you to do between now and next week's video, where we're going to get into the more specific technical details, is start to pay attention to it. Pay attention to not just light, but the harshness of light, the saturation of light, shadows, color, all of that kind of stuff. You know, look at things. You need to learn to see images, and that's going to be the chapter after lighting, is see images. But right now, I just want you to worry about seeing light, looking at things and noticing when things are poorly lit, when they're well lit. In fact, I'm going to show you an image right now. And what you can see from the image is the one is lit correctly. It's the same couple, wedding photo. One is lit correctly. They're bouncing some light, reflecting it, and it's filling up. The other one, they're lit too heavily from overhead, which is creating shadows under their eyes, and is a terrible photo. So you can see the difference that lighting really makes, and most people don't see that. Most people would look on the photo on the left side of your screen and think that one looked fine, and not really notice the shadows under their eyes and all of that other stuff. So you really, really need to be thinking about that. And that's really going to apply to assignment 1. You want to apply these things, and I want you to take them inside, take them outside. Think about fluorescent lighting, think about incandescent lighting, think about sunlight, think about using your flash, and go through all of those things to try to create the best images possible, and to really learn what you're doing, because you're not always going to be shooting in one situation. And so you want to be prepared for whatever you have and know what you can do to make the most of those photographs. So think about light, look at things, and next week we'll get a little more in depth. Have a good week.